Seriously, what's going on over here with this chair?
I know. Doesn't it feel like you're falling off?
Well, I am falling off. Just from afar. I'll just, from afar, you all.
We should bump that up. The back should be bumped
Put,
up.
put bumpers on it, so we can't slide away. All right, we're ready to go. Are we ready to go, everybody? Everybody ready to go?
We're ready.
Good morning.
Morning.
Happy Wednesday. Today is August 21st, and I would like to call the Legislative Committee to order at about 10:34. Roll call, please.
Bates. Doherty.
Here.
Molina. I see she's there. Molina. Silva.
Silva is here.
Strathman.
Strathman here.
Gums.
Gums here.
Linder.
Linder here.
All right, and we do have some requests for remote attendance.
We have a forum.
Yes. Mr. Tepe. Yeah,
And Tepe.
okay, we do have some remote attendance requests. Mr. Doherty, Ms. Silva, Mr. Linder, any objection? All right, very good.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Tepe, go right ahead.
by including me today, you do have an in-house quorum, so.
Yeah, we identified that. Thank you, though. All right, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes for March 20th, 2024 and April 29th, 2024, if there's no changes.
Madam Chair, I would ask for unanimous approval of the minutes from March 20th and April 29th of this year.
Thank you very much. Ms. Strathman asks for unanimous consent. Any objection? Seeing none, thank you. I don't have anybody signed up for public comment for agenda or non-agenda items. So very good there. And then under new business, we have two items. Madam Chair online? No, I don't see her. Well, if it's okay with the committee, let's skip A and then we'll go to B. So we can identify that should she pop on. So a couple of, I handed out something to all of you with just some ideas. I know I've talked about this before, but I wanted this committee to review those ideas and address kind of how I'd like to draft this and if the committee so sees that it's appropriate. I also emailed this out to you just now, but it's totally a draft of their ideas on paper. So what I'd like to do is have a conversation about these agenda items and just a standard tenant and then go forward for next month and draft a resolution with these tenants in mind with your approval and consent, and then we'll submit them for a vote at this committee, and then we'll forward it on to the county board so that we can have a agenda in place for the veto session and going forward. Ms. Strathman has a question.
When you say we're going to have a resolution, the resolution would want us to what?
So the resolution would identify the tenets of what the county's legislative agenda would be,
Okay.
to include some of the things that I just put on paper here, and it's only for discussion because I think it's a good outline of some of the guidelines that we may want to use as a
I think
committee.
it's an excellent idea.
So I know I just gave it to you, but going through, and I don't know, Blair, if you want, I'm going to ask you to pull it up so everybody online can see it just in case. Again, these are just some ideas and they're kind of stolen from around the country, other legislative platforms and agendas,
That's
but
called a collaborative.
it is collaborative. Thank you very much, Ms. Strathman and Ms. Bates. Yes. But I would like to read it so we can kind of have a general idea of where this committee needs to go and how important it is for, as many of you are chairs of committees and are on other committees, how it's important to bring those back to this committee so we can actually be functional at the legislative level. So Some of the things I put forth are the King County Legislative Agenda is guided by a set of values that align with our mission statement and include honesty, accountability, responsibility, dignity, sincerity, efficiency, transparency, innovation, and excellence. So I just wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the weeds on that. If that language sounds appropriate to include in the tenets of our forthcoming agenda, on how you all feel about that.
Chair.
Ms. Bates,
We add sustainable. So we add the word sustainability.
I love the word sustainability and it's essential. I mean,
Could go right there.
do we agree that that should be included then?
Sure.
That's why we're doing a little exercise here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you can
Okay.
tell I'm not an imposter.
Yeah.
We go off the rails here. Okay, and then the second part is the legislative committee works with all county offices to identify, review, and affirm support or opposition of legislation, both at the state level and the federal level. I think that from my perspective, it's important to include that we're working throughout the county. When it comes to this, I'm going to call it a major initiative that we get this agenda in writing and approved by the county board.
Yes,
I think it's a major
I
issue.
think you're right. Yep.
And I think that to identify that we're working with all the county departments should be in writing.
And committees. Do we need to say
Well-
all county committees, standing committees and offices?
I think we go on down the
Okay,
road
all right,
somewhere
never mind.
with that. But
Yeah,
I
or
mean, I
maybe-
think, Mr. Linder, go ahead.
Or maybe departments and offices, because we do make that distinction in budgeting and other places, departments and offices being those elected officers.
Okay, I like it. I'm jotting it down. I'm glad, thank you for the grace here to do this exercise because I don't know how else to get it done.
No, I
But this
like
is the right way. This is the
This
right
is-
way to do it.
This is good,
Thank you.
but you don't want to put committees as someplace.
Well,
else?
it isn't, so let me just get through it and then,
Okay.
yeah, but I
Alright.
wrote that down to committees. So,
Good.
and then King County continues to maintain strong relationships with our legislators, ensuring that King County residents have input and representation.
Good.
I think that needs to be in writing just in this platform, because as we all know, we have individual relationships with our legislators, but collectively and with whomever we have to represent us as a consultant or a lobbyist, we need to maintain those. And I think it's important for the public to read that when we finally get this on a web page. Any objection to that?
Nope, no objections.
All right. And then some of the goals that I laid out, again, I've stolen some of these, but they're pretty generic, but I think important to be generic. Let me just say that. So the goals of King County's legislative agenda are supporting legislation that promotes transparency at all levels of government. I think, and I hope that I can get the consensus of this board that that's important to us.
Good.
Do you think that there should be any change in that language at all or any additions? I mean, ideas is what I'm looking for here, but I thought that it was important to identify transparency.
Mhm.
Then secondarily, support legislation that allows counties to expand all forms of revenue sources. Again, these are very standard, but I think we need to put them in writing so that we don't, so when we have requests for committees or our chair or whomever to go out, then they have a standard by which we're following.
This is like the broadband, leasing broadband is a revenue source.
Correct. So we
So it's
want to
an
include
example
any,
of-
I would like to think that this committee would support anything that advances our opportunities for revenue. That's what this basically says.
Okay.
And again, after we get through this will go through the civil division to make sure that it's all legal and proper and all of those things, but I need to do a working group here so we can identify these things. And then this number 3 would support legislation that maintains local government control. As you all know, I think that there's an issue with our inability to do certain things as a result of legislation that has changed down in Springfield. And I think this county in particular, and probably every other county, would like to maintain that autonomy at the county level. and not have our ability to control things that occur in our counties, taken or stripped from us.
Don't mess with our business.
Ms. Strathman.
I agree with that. And I am wondering, I'm thinking
Can you
about,
get closer to your mic? I'm
yes, I can. I am wondering about when people come, when the public comes and makes speeches, and they tell us we should be or we shouldn't be. And we have no control over some of the things that they say. I'm wondering if we need to make this statement a little bit longer so that it includes something to the effect that of the things that are under our control. I'm not saying it right at all, but I'm saying, because this makes it sound like we have I'm just wondering if this makes it sound like we have the authority to do whatever we want. And there are times when people come in and say, you should be doing, and we say, well, we can't do that. That's a state law. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
How would we,
So
and I
think-
don't have the way to phrase it, but I think we need to make that statement a little bit longer.
Well, maybe send the committee an idea on how we can rephrase that. But I think when I wrote this down, I felt like this is telling our residents, and it's a message of our goal, so that those legislative actions in Springfield and or in Washington understand that it's the county's will to maintain our control over what it is that we do. Ms. Bates.
Maybe something like maintains local government control under our jurisdiction of that which is under our.
Yeah, that's all I'm wondering, because we have had a lot of people show up and say we should be doing something that we have no control over.
So I agree with you, but I disagree with you. So I understand it. And again, thank you, because we need to talk this through.
Yeah.
So fundamentally, we have no control over certain things. What this particular section does is let us follow a standard that says we don't want the state of Illinois or the federal government to strip any of our local controls that are already existing. So maybe by including the already existing local control or something along those lines might address it.
Something, I just think it needs to be just a little bit longer.
Sure.
It maintains current local government control.
Yeah, something,
Okay, so I'll
You said. you
include
just
that
said-
and we'll go from there, but I agree with you.
yeah, because I support that we need to be our own entity and govern the way that we as a board choose. But there are times that we're restricted by things that are already in place that we don't have control of. That's what I'm thinking of. So
Okay.
however we
Yeah,
figure.
well, I'll work it through later and then send it to you guys.
Okay,
All right.
I still like under our jurisdiction.
yeah, something like that, I think.
All
And
right.
that's pretty
Because our.
simple,
jurisdiction-
but it's broad. Yeah.
Mr. Linder, what do you think about that?
Well, I think we're talking about two different things. I think in this sentence, maintains current local government control or a current level of local government control. And then somewhere, it's almost like in a footnote or in the introduction, one or the other, to say that there are certain things we can do and certain things that we have been restricted from. But that in terms of the goals, we want to maintain the current level of local control. And then you get down to that next one that talks about legislation that grants permissive authority to counties, which would be expanding that local control. So
And then
you've
number
got-
6 too. Yeah.
yeah, but that disclaimer that we don't control everything can go somewhere in a footnote or something. It doesn't belong in the goals. The goal isn't that we can only control certain things. The goal is that we want to control what we can. So we can work that around. I understand what they're saying about, making it clear that we don't have complete control, but I guess an ideal goal would be that we do have complete control. So we can explain that somewhere in here. I don't think it belongs in this list.
Okay,
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Ms. Bates.
to go with what Mr. Linder said, possibly just above the goals of the county legislature we could have one explanatory sentence statement about the jurisdiction of King County is mainly in the unincorporated areas, and I don't know, you do the
Well,
hard
that's,
part.
actually, that's a great option. I think if we do an explanatory paragraph prior to, that
Even
says-
just a sentence.
yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that too. And I
But
that
you
understand,
addresses Mr. Linder's concern of it not being a goal, but more of a
right,
identification.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will do it that way and then I'll send it to you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms.
I also
Stra-
like, I think in Mr. Linder's explanation, he added in number 3, maintains current.
Yeah, that's good.
And I like that good.
Maintains what?
Current local
Maintains current local government control.
control.
And I think that's a good
Current
one.
level, yeah,
Current
Okay.
level, okay. Of
of
local
government control.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
I like it too.
Okay.
All right, good. All right, number 4 actually is, it all plays together. So, number 4 supports legislation that grants permissive authority to counties. So if there is legislation, introduced at the state level or at the federal level that grants us, more control, I would like to think that this committee would support such legislation.
Mhm.
And it is broad and it's designed to be broad, but I think, and again, these are tenants, these are not individual pieces of legislation. So I think as an Ms. Bates, go ahead.
Okay. So going along with what Mr. Linder said before, supports legislation that grants permissive authority to counties, maybe that maintains current level of permissive authority, and
Well, okay, so I hear you, but comes here.
we're talking about new
So,
ones.
so we have both of those agenda items in that we want to maintain control. So that would be number 3, but we want to support any additional control they want to give us.
Okay, good. That's fine.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Number 5, I think is super important and that it is pardon me. That the county opposes unfunded mandates imposed by state or federal government. I can't tell you how many problems we have. Mr. Teppi's identified, so many issues, with these unfunded mandates. And I think if there is any legislation that imposes unfunded mandates, I think this county should oppose that.
But what if it's
Ms. Bates?
something that we believe in that fits all of our values? I think this needs clarification, maybe.
So- Okay, I mean, I think that,
Or is it just that they can impose whatever, they can do whatever they want,
Or-
but they have to fund it?
so for example, we have this Safety Act that is a
Sure.
lot of unfunded mandates. I mean, that's just one example, right?
Mhm.
But if like any other piece of legislation on the planet, if you're going to mandate anyone do something, how do you pay for it? And I
Mhm.
think until there's a solution, I think, and again, that's why we're here doing this exercise, is because I personally I don't agree that there are mandates that they haven't told us how to pay for.
What? Oh, you don't agree with them doing that? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Teppi,
Madam Chair, I just want to state that I agree with you completely.
you do? Thank you.
On that point.
Write
Well,
that down.
On that, that's,
Mark the time
Don't
and
get
date.
carried away.
Mr. Linder?
I'm just saying, mark the time and date that Mr. Teppi agreed to something,
Okay.
anything.
So I like that one, okay. And then number 6, we go to oppose legislation that would reduce current authority of county governments. So the reason I included that is because, as you know, sometimes those things happen without our knowledge, right? So we have our lobbyists that try to keep track of lots of different things, but when we put this in writing, they'll know to identify, I mean, they already know, but I think it needs to be in writing that we don't want at the state or federal level them to strip our authority because it puts us in a bind. I mean, as we know, with certain projects that are before us now.
Absolutely what they did to us with the solar zoning. is an example of that, where they restricted our
Oh, right.
authority, saying, well, you can have your local zoning law, but it has to fit with our law.
Right. Okay. Oh, and then I think number 7, pretty standard for every county on the planet, oppose legislation that removes or reduces existing state appropriate county revenues. So we don't want them to keep taking money from us. And I think that needs to be in writing. Mr. Roth.
Would that include the circuit clerk had mentioned like some of the fees they used to be able to charge now, they're not able to charge them? Would that fall under that, or is that more of the?
No, I think it's pretty
Or under
generic for
number
a reason.
6.
So if there's anything that restricts our revenues, I think we would oppose that.
Right.
Would,
Ms. Bates.
would this be like, the 1% sales tax on food?
Yes,
I mean, they stopped that and we're gonna lose the money.
we're going to lose substantial money based on that
Yeah.
fact, right?
And they will
I mean,
say,
again, we're not talking about specific bills. So as the
Mm.
bills come up, we would have to evaluate as a committee each individual bill, but these are the tenets of
yeah.
the guidelines by which we would make those decisions.
Mhm.
And every bill might be different, right? So we might have these tenets in front of us and say, okay, everything in this bill is amazing and the legislative committee likes it, except for this one issue. And we could vote to support or oppose it based on
Mhm.
those details, but these are just general guidelines.
That's good.
And then the next paragraph reads, King County Legislative Committee receives potential bills for the legislative agenda from county departments and elected officials' offices. I should preface that idea with, the legislative committee would like to receive. Hint, hint, everybody listening. The legislative committee reviews these potential legislative items with the elected county officials and the county's lobbyists to identify its priority. It is then approved by the county board annually. So I think to include something that we should be voting on annually is important. And not us, but the county board as a whole, we should be doing this. We should have been doing this. The legislative committee has wanted to do this, but I think if we put it in writing, then we have
So
a requirement.
what are we voting on annually?
States. So
United States?
it is my hope and dream, and I think this committee's goal, to have a legislative agenda for every fiscal year presented by
Okay.
this committee through the process for the county board to agree or disagree on by a vote.
All right.
Going
Does
forward.
it say
or-
that?
I'm sorry,
It
Madam Chair.
doesn't say vote on the, it's then. it doesn't
Approved,
say
approved.
agenda. It doesn't say agenda here. You've used these, but I think you need to say, instead of it, you should say the agenda, the legislative agenda is then approved. It, instead of it.
Mavis, could you use your microphone?
Ms. Strathman, go ahead.
But
Can't hear what Mavis
Okay.
is.
I think in that last sentence, it is then approved by the county board annually. I think the word agenda
it-
does not appear in this paragraph.
So we remove "it is" and
And
put
say
in the agenda.
Legislative agenda
Okay.
is, then, yeah.
Any more issues with that? Anything you want to add there? Pretty self-explanatory, I think. And then King County Legislative Committee recognizes that the legislative landscape is very fluid. As such, the following process shall be used to amend the legislative agenda. Now, these are things that I took from other counties and how they navigate what they want on their agendas. And because, as we all know, bills pop up randomly, and we need to be able to have a standard by which we address those. I think that needs to be in writing instead of how we handle it now, which is kind of willy-nilly. So I broadly suggest that how can a member of the board take a position on a specific piece of legislation? And I think we need to put that in writing so that there's an answer. And you can attend a legislative committee. You can attend the legislative committee and ask the committee to take a position on the bill. Number 2, meet with the standing committee for which the bill is pertinent to request on behalf of that committee and ask the legislative committee to take a position on the bill. So if you have a public health issue that is legislative. You go to your standing committee and ask, is this something we want to ask to support or oppose? I think that would be a good way to handle it. Does that make sense? Does that sentence make sense? And is it decent? Ms. Strathman?
The wheels are turning in my head, as you can tell. Yeah, what does this do with the committee process, though?
So I think what I'm identifying in this sentence is if there is a pop-up bill or a pop-up legislative issue, there's two ways that you can add it to our main agenda. So our fiscal year 25 agenda, let's say. If something pops up in January that wasn't on that original approved agenda for the county, this gives you options to add through individual, so you as a board member could come to the legislative committee and propose that we support something. And then we as the legislative committee would decide yes or no, right?
So
Also-
let me, before you go further though, let me ask you. So in that process, we can't take a vote on it because it's not a resolution, right?
Well, potentially it could be. I mean, if you wanted to draft a resolution. I would think
But-
it would be a resolution, actually.
So I'm just trying to figure this out, how this would work in that if we, you use public health, if we have a resolution in public health, are you suggesting that after public health, it should come to legislative or before?
No, I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying that if something comes to the attention of the Public Health Committee
Mhm.
or an individual board member, it's really about board members, right? So
Okay.
an individual board member identifies that there's a legislative issue that may or may not affect King County. You can then, if you choose, take it to the standing committee in which that legislation pertains. So if it's got something to do with the Department of Transportation, then it would go to the Transportation Standing Committee as a discussion. And that discussion would be, hey, I think we should support this piece of legislation. You all decide on your standing committee if that's something that you agree on, and then you can bring it to the legislative committee to add it then to the main agenda.
So I like where this is going, but I'm just trying to be clear so that we're not creating another step for us in
No.
everything. So if we approve something in the transportation, on that committee approves it, what would the need be for, you're saying it's not a need, it's just a suggestion to promote? Is that where you're going?
Well, if we go by the standard of we have a main legislative agenda, if we have one document that is a legislative agenda, if we go by that standard and we want to include something, then it would need to come to legislative committee to add it onto that main agenda as a whole.
You know, I think this is a wonderful idea that you're developing, and I really like that you're doing this. Mike, you can see I'm struggling with it because my process challenges are going around. What happens? Are you suggesting that in January, this coming January 25, we have a proposed legislative agenda for specific bills?
Yes.
And so as we add to that, and I understand you're saying any board member could say, hey, I saw this come up about transportation. We need to look at this or whatever. You're saying that they should bring it to legislative and to a board member that's on a transportation committee?
I'm saying either or.
Okay,
So
either or,
yeah,
okay.
so if a board member wanted to come to legislative committee and propose that we support one piece of legislation, that would be an option under number one. And then additionally, under a second option would be if you sit on the Transportation Standing Committee, you could collectively have that conversation and then forward it on to the legislative committee to add to the agenda. So it's two options.
So I see how I'm working this out in my head is you're trying to make the legislative committee more of an interface with the other departments and the other committees. Is that?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay. See, that's what I needed, that
Yeah,
little piece.
yeah.
All right. So now that I have that, now I'll have some other things that'll go around in my head and I'll ask in a minute.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
And Michelle, I'm assuming that if the individual board member comes to legislative committee, it might be obvious that we want to move forward with something. It might also be that we would say, sounds like a good idea. Why don't you get the transportation committee to look at this and get back to us? Could go both ways, right?
Absolutely, it could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a big enough issue, we may, as a committee, want that to happen, right?
Yeah. Sometimes, we don't have time to go through this kind of burdensome committee structure that we have. And now we're inserting one more committee in the string. Sometimes that there isn't time for that. And so then that legislative is going to have to add to act to get that onto the program. And as it goes in the program, it goes to the lobbyists.
Right.
But other times, we don't want to usurp the authority of a standing committee by any means.
Never, right?
No.
never.
What he
Right.
said, what he said. That's exactly where I was
No, I-
thinking. So thank you, Mr. Linder.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah.
So I think, I'll tweak that section and maybe add number 3 or something.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
I can help you with it. But Dory's got his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Doherty, I apologize. Go right ahead.
Don't apologize. I think if I wasn't on the legislative committee and I saw a bill, because of, as Mr. Litter stated, our little slightly burdensome committee process, I would go to whichever committee had a meeting coming up. So if it's 2 days from Ledge, I'm not going to wait a month or 3 weeks or 2 weeks for transportation, since we're talking, on the same guideline. I'm not going to wait the 3 weeks for transportation to come around. I'm going to go to Ledge right away and say, here's this bill. As a non-legislative board member. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does.
So they're going to go wherever. For us to try and say, hey, you didn't go, blah, blah, blah. Well, then tough cookies. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I look at those 2 sentences. I think they're very good. I just, like I said, I'm not going to go and wait if I had something to talk about.
So maybe another thing that we can add in here is what I would like to, at some point, I guess, address time sensitive pieces of legislation. So that can be like a whole section that I should add, because
Like priorities.
yeah. So I'll work on that for sure.
Well, I'm not saying that. I mean, just people are impatient.
Yep.
And hey, I heard of this. Who should I talk to? Well, Ledge is coming up in 2 days. I'll go to that meeting. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying, oh my God, there's a bill that's going to pass tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm just saying I heard of a bill coming up and I want to make sure the board's aware of it. I'm going to go to Ledge if that's the next meeting coming up. I'm going to go to maybe executive if that's the next meeting coming up. Hey, guys, this is coming up. We should, talk about this. And of course, it's not timely or appropriate, but that's how people's brains work.
So are you suggesting that that's a bad thing? Like, I mean,
No, I'm saying we can't guide this. Hey, you come up with a bill, you have 2 choices. Go to Ledge or go to the committee. And maybe I don't want to wait. Maybe I'm sitting on executive tomorrow and I just found out about this and I want to tell everybody.
so
You
we
know?
can add a number. I mean, would it be good then, Gary, to add a number 3 to say that, whatever, like when you
Oh.
find it appropriate,
No,
perhaps?
just accept the fact that people are going to do whatever they want,
Sure.
regardless how many sentences you have under the members seeking board's positions. You know what
No,
I
I
mean?
understand that. No, I get that. So I guess my point then, or not my point, my goal, I think, would be the point of these two sentences is to make sure that we can add things onto that main document. And I think that there at some level has to be a process for that. What that looks like, I just kind of threw a couple of things together, but I think we need to have the ability to, I mean, because it's legislation is so moving all the time. I just think we have to identify that there is an ability to alter the original document. And I don't know how to do that, but throw this together. So I'll come up with some more ideas.
I'm just
for
saying
them.
the way you have it is great. Just don't be butthurt when people don't follow that guideline. That's all.
Right. Gotcha.
Otherwise, it's fine. I mean, I'm not saying change
Okay.
anything.
Oh, okay. All right, cool.
And Gary, I think over time, we'll get to the point where when somebody does come up, an executive, and say, hey, what about, I just read about this bill. We will develop a way that then funnels into the system, that it's appropriate to bring it up any place, but that somehow it funnels into the system so that we get it to the lobbyists, and so that we do vet it to be sure it really is something that fits within our general guidelines. If it doesn't, then maybe we want to have more discussion on it. But I think it's fine. Just what you said, it comes up here, it comes up there. We just want to make sure that when it does, it eventually gets funneled around to a place where we all as a board are on the same page, or at least 13 of us are on the same page, hopefully 24, and that it does then get on to the radar of our lobbyists.
Yeah, you're 100% Michael. Right, Michael. That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
Again, what he said.
What he said. I'm digging this meeting.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Okay.
Michelle, and you've given us a great framework to get started with. We come in here and don't know what to talk about. Now we've got some stuff here on paper that we can sort of guide ourselves, even if we have to adjust some of it.
Here.
Thank you. And so I'm going to move on to the witness slip submission guidelines. And again, these are just ideas because I think we need the base. So a county board member, the county board chair, the county lobbyist may submit a witness slip on the county's behalf for specific legislation when the county's legislative agenda is clear about the position it holds as it pertains to the specific legislative issue. So right now, the way it sits is I can go and sign a witness slip on behalf of the county if I choose to do that. And I personally don't think that that is appropriate. I think it should be in line with the county's strategies, positions, and values. I think that, and again, it identifies that later on in number 3, it says individual board members are not restricted in submitting witness slips in their individual capacity. I don't want to restrict board members from doing it. I'm just suggesting that there should be a process and a policy that indicates if we are going to support something on behalf of the county, we are within the guidelines that we set in our agenda.
And how would you monitor that?
Well, you can't really monitor that, I guess. I mean, you can, but Ms. Bates.
Are you talking about when you're filling out a witness slip and it says something like your title or something?
I can barely hear you.
Okay, sorry. Are you talking about when you're filling out a witness slip and it kind of says your title or who you're representing? If it's part of our if it's in compliance and supporting our agenda, I can say Mavis Bates King representing the King County Board. If it's something that is not, it's like more personal to me or not on our agenda, then I should just say representing myself. That's
Yeah,
what
so
we're talking about.
That's why I think it should be in here. Yes, you're 100% correct.
I get it.
So I don't want to be supporting as a county board member. I don't want to support legislation that is not in alignment with what this county's goals and objectives are. I can do that individually and put self, but I think we need guidelines and a policy that says we shouldn't be doing that.
Okay.
Ms. Strathman,
All right.
I see it in your brain there.
Yeah, my brain's turning
Yeah.
again.
Brainstorm.
I agree with that. But
But
it might be an overreach, I think. And I'm wondering if
Might be.
we would be better off not saying it so that people go, aha. I'm not going to just put it in as myself. I'm going to put in that I'm representing the board. You know what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying, and the way I understand is that's what we can do now, right? I can do that right now.
Right. But what I'm saying is, I feel like this is a bit of an overreach because we are all elected officials. We're all equal in our say, supposedly. We are, as we go in as individuals, it's different than if we go in as a committee chair, but I'm just having trouble with this. It feels like an overreach to me.
Mr. Roth.
I agree with Ms. Stratman. I mean, it's a fine line because you could have someone said, well, I thought everyone agreed with it, even though they didn't, some people may take advantage of
Yeah,
the
that's-
wording. And it's a fine line. I don't want to make it like it's meeting after meeting to approve it because then it defeats the whole purpose of witness slips, right? Because you got to act fast on those.
what
So
we're
we
here
have
for.
to be careful that we don't have like a board member submitting on behalf of the county and it's really is their personal opinion. And you can make all these rules, which we got enough rules as it is. So I don't believe in that. So it's a fine line. I don't necessarily disagree with the concept. We may have to adjust of what it means or whatever.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, Ms. Bates.
I'm confused because I hear us all agreeing and I don't understand where we're disagreeing. So is it on number?
Here, I'll make up a theoretical example. One board member does it in that capacity because they think it needs to be the board saying it. And some of the board members disagree with it. So they're, in a way, they're abusing their power or it's an overreach of that person.
Isn't that what this is already saying? Is that an individual board members are not restricted in submitting witness.
No,
slips
as a
in their
self,
individual capacity, that would be,
that'd be self, that, no problem.
so we've got
But
that.
no, I'm talking about number one, Mavis,
Number one, okay.
Yeah.
because it says a county board member. So I submit a witness slip and Cheryl says, well, I disagree with you. It's like, oh,
Okay,
it's too late. It's already been submitted.
Right.
okay.
But I don't want to have meeting after meeting to decide it. So
I don't want to add, pardon me for just jumping in here. I don't want to add another level of maintenance of this, I don't want you to have to do it. I don't want somebody else to have to do it. I think there should be, I'm a little worried that if we put this in here, people are going to get the idea that they can do it. That's kind of what I'm saying. If somebody is motivated to, if they know they're in the minority of what the board is thinking, then they could put in there representing the board.
But this does the opposite of what you're suggesting.
You know what? I get it.
No, I need help. Maybe
Yeah,
this is
I,
part-
I,
well-
I think we need to just say specific bills in number one, specific bills that the legislative committee has already approved.
There are no witness slips for non-specific bills.
But we don't say that in number
Right,
one.
but I mean,
It says,
already implied
definition of a witness slip
is specific.
specific legislation. Oh, well, then we're covered that it can only be for specific, okay, I'm.
Yeah, because there is no witness slip for a generic anything. I
No,
mean, it's
all
a
right.
Specific bill.
Here's
And I
a
think the
wild
key-
idea. Go
Mr.
ahead.
Linder?
Sorry.
And I think a key to this is that that person is submitting a witness slip is doing it in accordance with how it fits into the goals that are on the left side of the page or some specific action that's taken to the legislative agenda. They're not doing it contrary to those goals or what's been approved in the legislative agenda.
Mr.
can
Doherty,
make
your
that.
hand is up.
Yeah, the point is, it's wholly inappropriate for any board member to represent the board when it is not of the opinion of the full board.
Exactly.
So I can put down on my witness slip, board member representing self. Someone said that early on. And that's totally allowed. If once I say representing King County Board and it's not, that's just wrong. I mean, I don't think we need to go into the weeds of wording that, because board members should know you can't do that. I mean, you can't give statements to the press if it's not something that the board has already decided. So, you know, I can't call Brenda Shore right now and say, you know, the county is giving away free stuffed, you know, meatballs, because it's not true and it's not representative of the county. So you can't, it doesn't matter. You cannot represent the board when it's not representative of the board.
So what I hear you say, Mr. Doherty, is how do I say this? I agree with you. And I think that most board members do know that, except for the random person that doesn't abide by that, right? So that's why I thought, and we can strike all this or whatever, but I thought that if we had it in writing, people would be reminded that,
They can do it. That's what I'm worried about.
well, but see, but I think we agree, but we're not articulating it properly. So let's go back to this and I'll reword it, because we could be here all day. But
Right.
I think we agree. It's just, I'm not articulating it properly in these sentences.
I agree with that. And I just tuned into the word clear. I mean, right now, we're not clear.
Right.
So anybody could say, oh, I wasn't clear on that. And so we have to be very clear on how we we word
totally
this.
rework this.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Mr. Roth.
Here's a wild idea. Why don't, it's the consensus of legislator that could occur, because we're gonna, you know, you have the power of this committee that you're gonna make a good decision and not be a personal decision that, and there may be a few that, you know, some board members say, well, I don't agree with legislator, and we'll have to fine tune it as we go. But at least that's a little bit of control without adding a lot of bureaucracy to the process.
Well, and again, the ultimate goal of this exercise is so that the entire board
Right.
has a document in front of it that we either vote on or don't vote on as far as our agenda goes and our goals go. I mean, that's the intention of this.
Right.
So again, we're not going to have 24 people agree on
Anything.
what our legislative agenda is, but it doesn't matter if we have the majority, that's what we vote on. I mean, just like everything else. So all right, well, those are just some of the ideas that I had. And then again, this is going to be a working thing. So I needed someplace to start. So I appreciate
start.
you guys engaging in the conversation, because we needed to start somewhere. And
I got
Ms.
a
Bates.
Okay, so I've always wanted a clarification on access, so I'm calling this access to lobbyists and legislators. And what I've got so far is any county board member is encouraged to bring legislative issues to the relevant committee or legislative committee. If there is an urgent matter that's all the further I got, but I'll make up the rest, that the board member feels they want to take directly to the lobbyist or directly to legislative members, they should let the legislative committee know after they've done it or something like that.
I'll look forward to your wording on that in an email.
Okay,
I like
all
it.
right. Okay, but
We're moving. We're doing something
all right,
here.
I will do
Yes.
that with the idea that we want to respect the standing committees and the legislative committee. I'm just picturing someday there's going to be something that I hear from Jody, Miss Wolnick or somebody, and I'm going to say, oh, I really want to call Representative Hernandez, Senator Holmes right away. And I'll let Michelle know later or something like that, or
Yeah, but you don't have to.
have to what?
Let me know anything.
But that should be part of this.
Okay, I look
think.
forward to reading that language.
Okay, great.
So again, just to start to the exercise, and hopefully over the next couple of days, I will add a lot more. And just so you're aware what I would like, and if you guys can just hear me out on this, what I would like to include, just looking at all the counties throughout the country and what their platform looks like, I would like to include like a little history of Kane County, how many square feet, Kane County covers, how many municipalities we have. And then I would also like to include in this, we'll call it a packet, who our King County legislators are, their addresses, phone numbers, and emails.
Cool.
I would like to include all of the standing committees on the legislative, all of our data. I mean, I just want it to look professional in that it's going to be a page, and one click will get you to what our agenda is. Another click will get you to who your legislators are, if it's a federal or a state issue. And then the history of King County and a little bit of those pieces of information, I think would make it a lovely document. Ms. Bates.
Once we get the strategic plan done, then that's going to really help us with our legislative agenda, right?
Totally
So
has
we
to be in
can-
sync with the strategic plan.
Okay.
100%.
Good.
And then anything else that you guys can think of. Mr. Tepe, please.
Yeah. Yeah, Madam Chair, I'd like to suggest
I
that,
can barely hear you, sorry.
boy, that's change. I'd like to suggest that if any board member is going to be doing anything with legislative, that they should keep you and Mr. Linder informed. And, just out of the fact that when you come up with something, by having two people that are much more aware of what's happening, they can not only guide you to the proper place and the proper way to do it, but they can then also be informed of that particular board member's efforts in getting something done. It's not only it's the collaborative effect of us being able to get things accomplished, because what we want to get it done is we want to get something accomplished in the end. The more assistance and coordination that we have of what's going on, the better it is for all of us. So, even though you might want to bring legislation to some particular committee, keeping the chairs of this committee in the loop is, in my opinion, a necessary part of the process.
And I think Ms. Bates kind of agrees with that, so, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, Ms. Strathman.
I kind of think of it with what Mr. Tepe is saying as a depository of what's going on. This is what people have done.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
so that also, if we kind of did it like that, then any board member or any committee member could look at the depository, whatever you wanted to call that, and see what other people are doing and think, oh yeah, I had heard about that, or good, somebody else has heard about that too. So it would also inform us of what, as a body, individuals are coming up with and thinking about.
Mhm.
So I think that this is really giving some real strength to the committee, all of it, what you're talking about today.
Good. All right. And I didn't want to overwhelm it with the whole thing because we got to start small.
Well, you kind of.
No, I respect that. There's a lot of people that are doing things legislatively, and I will add on to the point, and I actually agree with Mr. Tepe. It would be nice, let's just say that, it would be nice to, when Mr. Linder and I are called, or any of you on the committee are called about a piece of legislation, and they ask you, hey, how do you feel about this, for example, and you have no idea what the heck they're talking about. And I think that depository would be a great solution to those problematic conversations. So the deposit, you could track that depository and say, well, somebody else is working on this. I read a little bit about it, blah, 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 blah. I think that's this is a great spot for that depository. So I agree with Mr. Tepe on that. I know Mr. I'm going to keep working on this. Great work, everybody. I appreciate the back and forth conversations.
And we appreciate the work you put into this. It's
Yeah,
pretty cool.
There's a lot more pages to go with this, but I didn't want to anyways. Mr. Rickards going to talk about a few things, I think.
Yeah, just a update, as this committee has requested. You've asked us to do our best to make sure you're aware of our legislative activities that we're working on. And so that's why I attend. And so just a few things to update you on. Our legislative efforts in regards to projects. We continue to work on the Long Meadow funding requests. Those requests are around the 30 million, as was told to the county board. We did receive 17.5 million. The 12.5 million, we're in the process of working on the intergovernmental agreement currently with the state of Illinois. That is ongoing. Our hope is that those funds would also be received before the end of the state's fiscal year. We also have to make sure that since those monies need to be reappropriated on an annual basis, we will continue to work with our legislators as well as with our lobbyists to make sure that that appropriate wording is within the bills that reappropriate the funds. So everything's going good with the 30 million and everything is progressing forward. And again, hopefully we have that by the end of June. The Randall at Hops Road intersection and the CN Railroad grade separation, we might be requesting our legislative Illinois General Assembly to authorize Kane County to acquire the real estate of this improvement by eminent domain using Quick Take. We've utilized that, or the region transportation departments utilize that when necessary and when appropriate, just to keep certain high priority projects moving forward. So that's something that we have started to have discussions. Usually what occurs is all the counties bring the list of projects that they need assistance with, and we all work together. And then we work with our legislators to make sure that that's part of the state's bills. And so I wanted to mention that. I think too, on that project, hopefully you heard that we did also receive about $12 million of ICC funds for the grade separation project. So a lot of good grants are coming in for that project to continue moving forward. As far as some other priority projects that we're working on, the Illinois 31 at Fabian Parkway, this is another project that we're talking with our legislators about and making sure that it's listed as a high priority, as well as the I-90 at Randall Road interchange. I passed this out a few months ago. This is a pamphlet that kind of just goes through, it lists all the regional projects in the Chicago region of priority. This is the pamphlet that Randall at Hops, our congressional leadership, our senators and congressional leaders received this list, and it's the primary document that's utilized to help prioritize those projects that are moving forward. We're submitting the paperwork for the projects for Kane County that are next in line to receive or to be put into this brochure and given over to our congressional leaders. And the two projects that are currently being focused on are the Fabian at Illinois 31 intersection. That's a safety.
Illinois, which?
Illinois 31.
Yeah, you didn't say that part. Okay, I think,
Oh, I'm
or I
sorry.
didn't hear it. Okay.
Okay. So Fabian at Illinois 31,
Okay.
it's a safety project that we're in the phase 1 engineering aspects. And so that will be part of the project, be part of the brochure, as well as the Randall corridor, including Illinois 72 through Big Timber. Primary focus there is the Randall I-90 interchange. And that interchange is a significant project in the coordination with the tollway, as well as with the state of Illinois and with federal funding. All of that needs to occur for that project to move forward. And so those are the two priority projects that will be given to our congressional leaders for future consideration. Some other projects that we've been talking with our legislative leaders about are Randall at US 20. I think you're aware that that's moving forward into the phase 1 engineering. I mentioned briefly the Randall at I-90. I think some of you were able to attend the public meeting on that. For right now, we're gathering more public comments at this point in time, and our goal is to actually submit the project development report, which is a requirement for the federal funding process, by the end of this year. And so that's moving forward. And then we're also having discussions about the regional transportation or transit issues. These discussions are ongoing. There is the public hearing that the Senate public hearing that is occurring next week on Wednesday, August 28th at 10 a.m. There's a number of representatives at the municipal, county levels that will be providing testimony at that hearing. We're currently working on some of those comments in order to have those submitted along with the representatives of our area. That's very important. It's important because of the potential cuts in services for the RTA and the service boards if that funding isn't resolved, as well as it's important for us for riding Kane, because riding Kane is part of that overall legislative aspect. And so those are the projects that we're talking to, as well as coordinating with our lobbyists on, so that they understand kind of where things are at and where they're looking at proceeding forward. The other thing is our activities with NACO, just trying to make sure that we are assisting in the national platforms that are being developed. One of the, or a few of the primary things we've been working on is our congressional leadership providing more direct funding to the counties. The overall highway roadway system in our country is primarily county highways. And we don't necessarily receive the brunt of the monies. And so NACO is working at the annual conference. That was one of the primary topics that was discussed, is trying to make sure some of those federal funds are more directly going to the county instead of having to be distributed through some type of other process,
A pass through.
like, pass through the state or through the MPOs. We're trying to really make sure that some of that is going more directly to the counties. It would help us, like with bicycle and pedestrian issues. Right now, any type of bicycle pedestrian project that we need to do, we either have to pay for it with local funds or we have to submit grant applications, and only about 10% of the grant applications even get funded. So a more direct distribution would assist us in allowing our local leaders to prioritize the projects that are issued. There were at the annual conference, there was also a lot of discussions on best practices as well as funding. The need for funding transportation planning was discussed. Safe street funding. There's a lot of money out there at the federal level for safe streets, but you have to have your safety plan in place. As you know, we're working on that safety plan, and hopefully that will be completed within the next year so that we can start going after some of those safety funds. Truck weights, there's a lot of lobbying to increase the truck rates on our county highway system. So we're always pushing back against that. They've already increased it once to 80,000
per axle
pounds. And that's done harm. The more weight that you put on the pavement, the more quickly the pavement degrades. And so we keep pushing back on that, as well as really trying to figure out, are there additional active transportation funding that could be provided, not only for the transportation system directly, but also for trails and such. So those are the different efforts that we are currently working on at both the state and the federal level. So,
I've got a quick question for you.
Yep.
So could it be fair to say then that we would, as the legislative agenda progresses, we would oppose, when we get into the specifics, I'd like to talk to you about opposition of that particular thing, because I know there's a heavy push for that weight increase, and that would be something that we would want to talk about as a committee that we would put forth as an opposition.
yep,
Very good. I'm adding that on my list.
that concludes my report.
Right. Gums here, I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you do. Getting in the weeds with legislation is very challenging for a lot of people, but you're really good at it, and I appreciate you taking the time and doing everything and coming here to report it. So as you can see, you're the only one. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Tuffy.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions, maybe not quick so it's not necessary that you answer them here necessarily, but on the Randall and Hops, okay, you said that we were going to proceed or thinking of proceeding with eminent domain to take the land there. Is there a problem in acquiring the land that we would need to do that?
It's not necessarily a problem except for the procedure. Lately, it used to be that we generally knew that we could acquire land within 18 months. And that's been process-wise through the eminent domain process, it's becoming more like 2 to 3 years sometimes. And so it's just to make sure that, because you would still continue with Quick Take, you would still continue through the court process, but it allows you to proceed forward with having the property in place while things are occurring in the eminent domain process. This is a safety tool that is used for a lot of your larger projects where you need to really make sure that you're able to proceed forward.
Yeah, I was just concerned that it was that it sounded like it was contentious.
No,
Okay, so.
no, this is a safety net. It's a safety net.
And then approximately how much land do you need around that intersection? And if you don't know, get back to me.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Okay, and then how would that be paid for? Is that going to come out of your funds associated with this project?
Yes, that would come out typically, mainly because of the processes for federal funds getting longer and longer. A lot of our phase 2 and land acquisition is done with local funds in order to help expedite it. So we do a number of techniques to help move the projects forward, and then we focus the grant funding on the construction aspects.
Okay, thanks.
Very good. We're gonna move back up to, we do have a resolution on the agenda, so if we could pull that resolution up for discussion. It's resolution 24-2254, and it supports state legislation authorizing county to lease buildings and land. Hopefully you all had a chance to read that. I was kind of hoping that Madam Chair would be here to present. But we can have a discussion on it if you'd like. Mr. Tepe, go ahead. Thank you.
I do know that our board chair is home ill. Okay, so that's probably why she's not here.
Sure.
But I think this resolution is just following
It's just your quiet.
boy, that's not
I
like
know, I'm
me.
just letting you know.
It's just that I think this process is pretty straightforward and it's just something that we can approve and move on, would be my suggestion.
All right. So does anybody have any, would somebody like to move it? Yes. Strathman moves,
8 seconds.
8 seconds. And do we have discussion on it at all?
I have discussion.
Ms. Bates?
I assume this is on a case-by-case basis, and this gives us the opportunity to discuss further particulars.
Could you clarify that?
Well,
question?
I'm not saying that I want a sports training and competition center anywhere. I'm just saying that we will allow this to a sports or any of these possibilities or music venue or whatever are in these examples, that when it came to specifics, this would all have to be voted on again through the county.
So this would, yeah, this
Process.
is a process. So it would be voted on here and then it would go forward to the county board and probably have further discussion, which I think will happen. And then we can get more clarity on it.
Mhm.
Is everybody here on that committee good with that?
That's not what I meant. I meant,
I understand what you're
Well,
saying. You're
okay.
gonna need more information
Yeah.
before you come to a final conclusion.
I don't mind voting that, yes, we should be allowed to lease, but I don't feel like I'm voting here to say, yes, we can put a music venue anywhere.
And
without a lot
unfortunately, I
of-
can't answer those questions for you. I can
Okay.
just, what you have in front of me is what you have in front of you is what I have.
Okay,
But, I'm sure when we'll get more information as we go forward.
okay.
Mr.
Yeah,
Kepi, did you?
I was gonna, again, any individual application that fell under this is just our approving the actions of the state in doing this. Anything further would end up being a specific example that would have to come before the county.
That's what I want. Thank you.
So this, I believe, is in reference to a specific bill. I do have, just from my position, I do have some objection, and I guess I'll have it when we have further conversation. But I think, it's important for me anyways, when we support I will vote to support this to push it forward. But when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it, I think there should be an inclusion of anything that we support should be as written. So the words as written. So that's just my perspective and maybe for our discussion right now. If we're supporting a particular bill, I want my support to read the bill as written, because if I approve something and it doesn't say as written, they can change all kinds of things and it's not in line with what I've just approved.
Mhm.
So I think when we get to that point, I will likely make an amendment to include the word as written or the words as written so that, I mean, any bill, Mr. Doherty, go ahead.
Well, you were 100% correct, but as written does not get you out of that problem.
Okay,
I think at this time or this version, something like that is where you want to be to say, as written. Well, they rewrite it and it's still as written.
that's fair. This version okay, so let me throw this by you. I got a brain thought. So if we attach the bill, when it comes to it, if we attach the particular bill and we call it Appendix A, we can then say as is written in Appendix A. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
okay, so that's a good solution. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just saying, as written can get you into trouble.
No, yeah, well, I'm in trouble, so I appreciate you keeping me out of trouble, Mr. Doherty.
Right.
Good luck next time. I like it.
Yeah, Ms.
Okay,
M-
so
Madam Chair.
let's, I mean, if we don't have any further discussion, let's just take a vote on this.
Linder.
Mr. Linder,
Yeah, I
me
do
see.
want to say, I read the explanation of what the bill does, and then I read the bill, and I don't see an exact match as to some of the examples that Mavis was citing, and I don't see language that necessarily says that in the bill. So I think somebody needs to be prepared to talk about that when this comes to the board. I'm going to vote yes to forward this to the board. And all this is increasing our authority to do certain things. Not to say we're going to do them, just increases our authority, which is part of what we said we wanted, as much authority as we could have. But I am a little confused as to when I look at that explanation that precedes the resolution, and then and the resolution itself, and then when you look at the bill, I'm a little confused as to whether there's an exact match there. And I'm hoping when we discuss this at the board, we have that discussion, that maybe state's attorney or somebody talks to us a little bit about that, because I see the language in the bill being directed towards things of historical significance and those sorts of things. And, you know, were we to turn around and you know, build a rock concert venue on that Fabian property, and that's an absurd example, but I've potentially made it absurd. I'm not certain how we justify that under this bill. So I'm hoping that when it comes to the board, we have that discussion. Somebody's there who can authoritatively talk on what the bill really means.
All right, I agree. And just comes here again, in the executive summary that is in the packet, I would like to address that it says the committee flow goes through finance and budget committee, executive and county board. I don't know if I need to move to strike finance and budget, because in the current executive summary, this is an old one, as I understand it. So the current executive summary, there's no reason for this to go to finance and budget. It'll go directly to executive.
There's no money.
Right.
There's
So
no
just,
money.
I don't know, do we have to make a amendment to remove that? I don't see any lawyers anywhere around here, but would it be the understanding of, yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, technically you need to have it the way you want it presented to the full board.
So we're
Hello?
gonna, we're gonna go ahead and nix the finance and budget committee from there and then vote on it. How about that?
Would you summarize again?
We're gonna get rid of the committee flow process on the executive summary. We're gonna get rid of finance and budget committee. It's not required. So this will go from this committee to the executive committee.
I
Yes,
see.
all right,
Okay,
good deal. Roll call.
okay.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Doherty,
Hold on, I think we're supposed to do a formal amendment, just, not
Okay,
just say it.
let's,
I mean,
let's do that.
Okay.
I'm waiting for it, Mr. Doherty. So, hold on really quick. I'm no lawyer, but the executive summary is not part of the actual resolution, so I don't know that we need to make the amendment. I just wanted it for clarity. Am I wrong? Am I wrong?
You don't need to change, no, if it's just the executive summary, you don't need to change it.
Fair. All right, good deal.
Sorry, Doherty,
Governor's
yes.
here, blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. Thank you for working that through with me. All right, roll call.
okay, Bates,
Bates, yes.
Doherty,
Doherty, yes.
Molina, Silva, Strathman,
Yes.
Gums,
Comes, yes.
Linder,
Linda, yes.
Tepe.
Tepe, yes.
All right,
And, you know, Chair, just
Mr.
a-
Tuppy, go ahead.
point of information, I think the fact that there's no money associated with this means it doesn't go to the finance committee
Yeah,
anyway. That's right.
I 100% agree with you again for the third time today. It just unfortunately reads finance and budget on my piece of paper in front of me, so. Mr. Linder, do you have any comments? Co-chair comments?
Before we
Yeah, I
go to
do.
Hold
Madam
on,
Chair,
Mr. Roth.
I have a new business thing I want to introduce.
We have new business. Go ahead, Mr. Roth.
Okay, I emailed all the committee chairs, or not chairs, but on this committee, the information. I also brought prints. So Mavis, if you could take this and pass it on. It's, as I started explaining it aloud, I also emailed it, so Mr. Doherty would have it, and Mr. Linder would have it too. And I copied anyone else who was on Zoom. I'm working with the AMVETS, Veterans of St. Charles. They're putting on their 5th annual Constitution Day celebration. And so that's the colors thing. It's on Saturday, September 14th. They had given me a request for a proclamation. And I discussed it with the state's attorney. And I've submitted to them to have it rewritten so it's correct legally. And they'll have that. But they suggested I submit it here to legislation that'd be able to pass it on so we can get it on the county board agenda, which is, I believe, September 9th or 10th.
Yes.
So, and then, so that's the request. So there's a fundraiser they're doing on September 9th on the back of it. I've also submitted to Julie Mann to see if we can get this in King County Connect about the event. They may not be able to do because of fundraiser, the one, but they can. Julie's pretty sure she can get it in for the actual Constitution Day.
So Mr. Rothgum's here. Quick question. So what you're asking is for this proclamation to be
Forward to the
approved and forwarded to,
county board meeting scheduled for
so
September 10th with
So-
the
so-
understanding that it will be rewritten by the state's attorney before then.
in the format of a proclamation.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody have any thoughts on this?
And this is an example, it just came up, so I didn't have time to.
No, anybody want to talk about this?
The only thing I would say is that probably requests could have gone directly to the chair's office at this point, but
Okay.
getting it here kind of does get it on the radar for the agenda. So I think that's good.
Okay.
Mr. Tepe?
Yeah, unfortunately, this was not on the agenda, so it's not something you can act on.
Right, it's new business, so we could just like,
But, you know,
we can't vote on it because it's not in final form,
right.
right?
I'd go directly to the
And
chairman.
I will, but
Ask it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it to us and
Yeah. But that's an example. You're talking about something that's fast moving because it is September 14th. So I'd like to get the proclamation proclamated before.
would just recommend you take it directly to them.
Okay,
At this
that's fine.
point, yeah. Since,
And
yeah,
this again points to something we talked about at the last board meeting, and that is that I'm working with Julie Mann and hopefully with Human Services as well to put together a list of those things like Constitution Day, those sorts of things that come up every year, and get them on a calendar that we can look at. And then that now becomes part of our annual plan. Doesn't mean other things can't come up during the year, but those things that come up every year, right now we're gonna do a proclamation for this, but it'll be the day after their fundraiser, or 2 days after their fundraiser. So, if we do it next year, if we have the event and maybe a contact person for that event, we can get it done in time and
Right.
have it on. And how we do that exactly, we don't know, but Julie has already put together a list of those days and weeks and months that we should be looking at, and we're going to review that, see if we need to add or delete, and hopefully have something to bring forward in the future, in the near future.
And the proclamation is more for the actual Constitution Day event, not necessarily the fundraiser.
Well, yeah, but
I understand what you're saying.
Well, it would be nice when the representative is there and gets to make a little 2-minute presentation or whatever, then they can say, oh, and by the way, we're having a fundraiser yesterday, but
Right,
instead
right.
of, yeah. So,
point taken.
yep.
No, thank you.
Any more comments from my co-chair, my fabulous co-chair?
I think this was a great meeting. We went here, there, and everywhere with some stuff, but as you start to work that through, and certainly, call me, if Ms. Strathman had a suggestion, it's not clear, call her again, whatever, and let's bring this back. And if we have to do it 2 or 3 times, that's fine. But let's get it done, because I think it's important that we do have some things down in paper that people can look at and refer to, and even refer to it to say, hey, this is missing. But this was a good start.
Amen.
Thank you. I thought it was a great exercise. I appreciate everybody's input, and I'll get you something in the next couple of days. I do not have any reason for executive session. If anybody else does, let me know. Nope. Somebody want to move to place the reports on file?
Bates moves that we unanimously put the records on file.
Action. All right, and I will entertain a motion for adjournment. Thank you everyone for being here today.
Motion to adjourn?
Bates seconds?
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, and congratulations to Rachel. She's coming up on her 1-year anniversary with the county.
Oh my
September
gosh.